me 1 second. Okay, hello. Hi, good afternoon. Thank you everyone for being here. This has been a controversial subject. The last month we have been following very close the progress on on what is happening with the cannabis. And the first event, the first webinar we have about this topic, we have a representative from the Ministry of Production and Foreign Trade, one of the advisors for the Ministry of Montaneda, which basically started like he was saying, Ministry of Montaneda was saying that cannabis is the next top industry of Ecuador. This was in the middle of the COVID-19. So on those days, we were making some of the research with our team, and we learned from that in a conversation, that forum that we had, that the Ministry of Agriculture, it was going to be in charge of the licensing for exporting, for growing of the cannabis, which already we have some kind of permit for the seeds, which is handled by ARCSA in Ecuador. But today we have the great pleasure to have Andres Luque. He's the Secretary of Agriculture for the Ministry of Agriculture and Livestock for in Ecuador. So thank you so much, Andres, for being here with us today. And just a little bit of introduction about who is attending to our webinars. Our webinars were planned at the beginning of the COVID for the expat population. We have to remember that in Ecuador, we have approximately 10,000 expats from North America, which they generate an income for over $500 million in Ecuador. And this is a very important part of the population, especially right now where we need all type of incomes, like legal incomes, to support the economy. An average, an expat is bringing to Ecuador between $2,000 to $2,500, which helps to our economy. So among our attendees, we have people that are interested on investing on the cannabis business. Since I was saying that we were talking in our last event about cannabis, we have some representative from the government, and also we have an investor that he's from Canada, from a Canadian company, and they are in Colombia working, and he shared his experience with us about the Colombia regulations and all that. So I know the Ministry of Agriculture, they have made their own research about the Colombia case. Colombia, they had a law from 2016, I think it's, if I'm not wrong, where they didn't import anything for quite some time. And this is very hard because Ecuador, it is gambling for or trying to get this new market of the cannabis. So please, Andres, if you can share with us what is the current situation on the cannabis business, especially on the part of the licensing and regulations, which, I mean, since June 21st, the cannabis was decriminalized in Ecuador. So it is legal to have consumption, of course, with medical purposes. So welcome, and thank you for being with us.
Hi, thank you, Marcos. Thanks to all of you who are listening. To be honest, I wasn't aware this was going to be in English, so excuse me, but I haven't used it for a while. Yes, we as a Ministry of Agriculture, the Assemblea, when they depenalized back in December, they gave us the duty of doing the framework, the regulation for the licensing of the whole chain from the seed to the biomass, or the first crude oil, which will be the raw material for the following industries. We work closely with the Asamblea, working with them, explaining them on how this is not a drug. And thus we have the competence or the faculty to do the licensing process. It was depenalized, as you said, last Sunday. And since last Sunday until the 19th of October, we have the legal time to do it. Nonetheless, since we were the ones that were lobbying in the Asamblea to get this, the minister went to Vancouver. I had the opportunity to go to Oregon. Some other people from the ministry went to Colombia. And since we also at the ministry, we come from most of the team from the same university. We have several colleagues in Colombia, for example, that are already in the business, and we have been talking closely to them. So yes, we started working on this before it passed before December. We have had many drafts, and now it's on a final revision on the ministry team. It has been shared also with other ministries, with the presidency and vice presidency, and I think it's a matter of just 1 week that it will be known for the public. What we have to say is that this is a regulation that it's according to the actual circumstances. Many people still think, or they say on social media, oh, it's going to be a joint outside the school of my children. So we have to be very careful with that. People have to understand that in most of the webinars that we have, we agree that these are people that don't have that prejudgment, but still Ecuador is a relative conservative society. So the normative, the regulation is according to that, but we also are very aware that it has to be revised each 8 months, and we are certain that this regulation is going to be most likely obsolete in maybe 2 or 3 years, according to what's going to happen internationally. And this is a great advantage actually, that it's in a single ministry, all the licensing, compared to other countries. We have, for example, other countries, you have to go to 3 ministries and 2 additional public institutions. Here we will have control of the whole agricultural chain. It's like palm oil, for example. We are the ministry that regulates all the processes. And here from the seed, we already have an existing law about seeds. It's called the LOASFAS. And then cannabis gets into the short cycles that are from the planting to the harvest have 8 months or under. It's considered a short cycle crop. And therefore, we didn't change anything. It's a depenalized crop. And it goes the usual process. But for example, in this law says that, for example, if you, Marcos, have a license to produce, you can import the seeds that you just need, and you don't have to go through the adaptability process with the INEAP. You could do that, but then you run the risk that if you get above 1% of THC, then it's not our competence anymore, and I have to call the Ministry of Interior, which then will have to destroy it. About the 1%, we see also that's an advantage. Most markets like the US or Europe are 0.3 and 0.2, and we are bringing those genetics, and we see it very difficult that they're going to surpass the 1%. But we see this as an opportunity for the people that, for example, if Marcos or Joshua, who I see now on the screen, are producing and they get past the 0.3 but are below 1, then the national industry has to be developed so that this crop can go to these markets, to this local market. So it wouldn't be, you wouldn't lose the crop. Therefore, we have been in talks with ARCSA, which is going to regulate the cosmetics and medicinal stuff that could be sold in the country. And therefore, that the industry also has to be developed internally so that people that surpass the international market THC level have another option. of course, every person is able to participate. It's very open. We have set some limits on the areas we want to have. They are not very big, but we also have to consider that we want first to have the first normative, as I said, maybe stronger, and then by 8 months, maybe a year, then to do it less demanding, because at first we also want to know, okay, how many people are going to get in, and see how it goes, and then we can start doing it more available to more people. Although we already consider that it's very open, we are thinking about, we also have made a difference. When people talk about hemp, they mostly talk about a single thing, but we have seen two very big mainstreams, which is the industrial for textiles, bioplastic, bioconstruction, and so on, where we have a more clear picture of what it's going to be in the future. We know that a factory that is going to be attended by 10,000 hectares can generate between $300 and $500 million per year by each 10,000 hectares. So that means that industrial hemp could, if we just take the 300 million, the lowest number, if we take 100,000 hectares into account, with 100,000 hectares, hemp could match bananas, which today generates that amount of money on 260,000 hectares maybe. On the other side, we also have seen the other line of business that could develop, mostly CBD, CBG, and other cannabinoids. Those are basically, we see it. When I was in Oregon, there was 400 times the area planted as in 2018. And what we know is that half this harvest is still in warehouses. So it doesn't make sense to do an Excel sheet and think you're going to be rich if the price is high, but nobody is going to buy. There we see that people that want to invest have to do a due diligence. We're not going to do that for them, but we can suggest if you don't have a market to sell, clearly it doesn't make sense to have production. And we also see that we have already an installed capacity. We have the flower business under roof, and not under roof like the Gizophilia, where they have already infrastructure for light manipulation and so on. So we see that's an advantage on the infrastructure and also on the knowledge. The know-how of the flower business in Ecuador is very, very, very professional at a world level. And we are very confident that they can handle the production side, but still the business side, the market side, we know that there's a pharmaceutical use, there are cosmetic use, but there's also a novelty use. And in Spanish, novelty means novelería. And we have to see how much percentage of that market novelty is, and how much it can drop. We now know that CBG is the new CBD. So we have to see how it develops. The investors have to make a bet on what to follow, right? But still, we still see we have 3 to 5 years that we can take advantage of that. It's still a new industry. Prices are sobre normales. Over normal, it means there's a big margin, but we also see that in a short cycle crop, people that invest need to have or must have the abilities to support these overproduction cycles that may encounter. A lot of people are going to get in, a lot of people in other countries are going to broke. We have to see how many can stay in business. Cannabis has an advantage that it can grow virtually anywhere. So with over time, if more countries are going to get in, we have to take advantage of the timing we have now and already develop an industry based on the concepts that we're already trying to sell as a country, which means premium and sustainable. So we are taking all those things into consideration.
Okay, we have been following a lot all the, I might say, almost all the webinars, all of the interviews you have given to different associations. Like, for example, on May 20, you spoke with the Flower Associations of Ecuador. And there you mentioned something about, in Colombia, there is a case where a Canadian company came and they invested $5 million, and then they sold that licensing, the project for $10 million. Yeah. So how is Ecuador going to prevent that? And in the other side, one of the things that we have been receiving so many questions, it is about why not the government allowed to grow cannabis at home. So this is two-part question. So
Yes.
if you can address that, please.
Well, thanks for the both questions about the not at home, because we also have to tell the truth. If you look at some genetics of hemp, and also we have to start calling things to look what we call each thing. We have to use in Spanish cáñamo industrial for industrial hemp, which is a very tall plant, very extensive in its production, and you can look at the window and see that it's not a marijuana plant. But if you go to the CBD genetics and CBG, those are plants that were developed in the US, but by people that were in the illegal market, and then they saw an opportunity in a legal market, and they started to crossing plants with less THC and so on. But phenotypical wise, or how they look, it's like having two identical people that do not have the same genetics. And therefore we see that it will be a problem to allow planting at home. We as a Ministry of Agriculture, we cannot go to each patio or backyard at each home. And it's very hard to differentiate between the THC plant. So as long as there's no THC, there is also already be contradictory to the normative that we are doing at the other ministries. We don't see it feasible to give licensing for production at home. And we also have to think that we have to benefit the people that are going to take those products, and people that are going to be in this flower business, or this biomass can be sold to the local industry. So the people here in Ecuador can have access to the CBD or CBG. There's already, if you look at social media, Instagram pages and Facebook pages, that you can buy CBD, you can buy anything, but nobody knows. We know that some labs have done tests, and most things don't have any CBD on it. So we have to be very careful with that. And once legalizations comes in, then also comes regulation for the benefit of the consumer.
Let me see. And what about the second part, that example you pointed, what happened in Colombia with the $5 million investment?
Okay.
Yeah,
sorry about the part, I forgot. Yes, what we don't have to have speculators here. We want to have exports, local industry, and job creation. Therefore, we have done it this way, that if you have the license, but you're going to sell a certain amount of the shares, then the license doesn't get transferred that easily. It has to be revised. For example, if you got the license and then you want to sell it, but you still haven't had any export or any production, then we are sorry, we are not going to let you have the license anymore, especially if you're going to sell it. So this is a productive regulation we're working on, and not a speculative one.
Okay, thank you for that. Joshua is here to moderate the questions. So I can see that we have some questions, and also we received some emails today, questions as well. So Joshua, could you please start helping us with those questions to Andres, to the Subsecretary?
Sure, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, let's start with this question from Germán Lozada. He has permissions to process cáñamo hemp or cannabis. What about the percentage of CBD and the variations of this percentage in production?
We are only working with below 1% of THC. CBD, we are, that's not a penalty. That's, if you want to make money, you want to have the best genetics with a more percentage. Their genetics between 15 and 25% available, but that part we don't we don't regulate it. We just are looking that it doesn't surpass the 1%. Of course, you need to know what other, if you have more CBG or CBD, and
Thank you,
market it's
Andres.
going to be.
Good. Another one interesting question from Attila says, what about security issues when criminals try to steal the plants for their own consumption and resale? Anything?
Well, like in Oregon, when I was in Oregon, people told me, yeah, some people go step up off the motorcycle, steal some flowers, but then they get like, eh. But most from stealing, I will more like on the security, on the side that maybe some people say, hey, how are you not making sure that some people don't plant THC plants high in THC between the lines? First, of course, we have to make sure that it doesn't happen. Therefore, nowadays there's traceability technologies and mapping technologies that are available, blockchain technologies that can make sure of that. And to be honest, I don't think anyone would risk a legal business that you can make money, good money legally if you do it right, to hazard it doing that something very stupid. But of course, there's the risk and there's the threat. And as I was saying at the beginning of this webinar, that's what people are going to judge. So we have to be very strict about it. And there we have, as a ministry, we have two institutions that are in INEAP and Agrocalidad. And Agrocalidad is going to have some duties on that level. It's a very professional institution. And they have very good procedures about how to sample, and they're going to be taking care of at that level.
Excellent, thank you. Just to recap, I believe you already mentioned that, but just to remind, there are two questions about this. The license process fee. Did it seem like it was free, or how much will the license process cost?
It's not going to be free. In the normative that we have now, once it gets signed, we also have some like 30 days to do the protocols with INEAP, certain parts, with Agrocalidad, the others. What we are going to do is charge a fee, a single fee on the, and I want people to understand that we have to do like a funnel, because if we do this open and free, I will have no time to look at maybe, I don't know how many folders. So we are putting a fee on the right to get the folder revised. And it's going to below, so that people that get the folder are not going to put the folder to let us tell them what's missing. But we are going to make it sure that, hey, read everything that you have to show carefully, so that once it gets to my desk, and you already paid for it, I can look through it truly and give the license as soon as possible. We don't want to be like a bottleneck in the licensing process. I know in some other countries it takes more than a year and a half, and we don't want that. We are running against the clock. We want people that are looking for this opportunity to start as soon as possible. And we will try to do our best to revise everything carefully.
Let me jump in right here. Since you are mentioning about the licensing, I would like to make a follow-up on that question, which is, so right now under the current circumstances where we have this COVID and everything is social distancing, so there's any plan to apply for the licensing online? Because I don't know if you need the person to physically go to the office and file a physical folder, or people, they just can do this online payment, making things easy. I know you mentioned something about due diligence, so there is anything at the Ministry of Agriculture plan to make this easy process? Well, I know you need to have some revision, but making easy for people trying to apply.
Look, we give several services, people that usually work with the ministry, people that are used to work with the loazas. The loazas applies to corn seeds, lettuce, and all crops that you can imagine. So all those services have been online since before the pandemic. Actually, it's still going to be online. And also we have to be aware that the ministry is decentralized and you have main offices in each province. So if you don't want to be online, even then you don't have to travel neither to Guayaquil nor to Quito. So it can be always be done decentralized or online. Most people don't know it, but it's doable, and we are going to make sure we can communicate it.
Yeah. Joshua, can you continue, please, with?
Yes, absolutely. Okay. So another question here that we have is, well, like what you were saying, where do I apply for the permits? There will be a website or a specific office in each province?
There will be a website. There already is. We will have to update the website with this information. But yes, it can be online and at each province capital and some other minor cities in each province, there's always an office from the Ministry of Agriculture where you can have access to the Ventanilla Única and do the paperwork.
Perfect. Thank you. Here's another one that we have here. For the future, perhaps it's an easy question. When will recreational cannabis be legalized? Is it in discussion yet?
I don't think, I mean, recreational by high THC, well, I have my personal opinions, but as a undersecretary, I have to do what the law told me to do, and I'm just working on the non-recreational, not below 1% THC. But I think the market is going to move that way. I have been talking to people in Germany, and they are not interested as much in CBD. They want THC. THC is also medicinal. I think it's a great opportunity for several diseases, and it's also recreational. I mean, we have alcohol, but that, to be honest, is another discussion that I can discuss as a private citizen, but not in the position I am right now.
Excellent answer. Thank you. You were talking earlier about only that home growth would not be allowed at this time. And so I was talking about, is there an average surface of land or minimum surface of land required for this type of culture? And what about, for example, if someone had a farm, a finca that has a home on it, that type of?
Well, if you have a home at the finca, that's another story. That's different. The problem is, look, it's already depenalized, but we are not going to regulate it. So if you're growing at home, you will have traceability to sell it to an industry, right? So it's about traceability, making sure that the industry gets what it needs, the pharmaceuticals local and in the outside the country get what they need. And yeah, if we have this, I call it in Spanish el cucu. El cucu is the THC for this industry. If we still have this in the country and it's not also a normative where they allow it or they regulate, we cannot get into the home cultivation. And we also have to think that if people want to get medicine, it has to, once things get legalized, it also has to be formalized. And I think people, when you go to a market or you go to a shop, you need the confirmation or an institution behind the product that you're buying. Because nowadays you can buy CBD, you just put it on Instagram or Facebook and you can buy it. But there must be a national institution that tells you it's certified and it was done with the right process, and the consumers have that right. And we are thinking also about the consumer.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, there are a couple of questions about the type of THC and CBD that will be regulated. For example, total THC or just Delta A.
Delta 9.
WJ says CBDA and THCA are very valuable for health, for example.
Okay, THC, the psychoactive one, is delta 9 tetrahydrocannabinol. Well, I just saying delta 9 tetrahydrocannabinol. That's because there are several THC also, but that one has to be under 1% on the dry matter. So once it's dried, it has to be less than 1%. And that's the only thing we have to look for. If you're growing it for CBD or for CBG, that's your business. And also, well, the other part, the industrial hemp, is not for CBD or CBG, but there are the fibers. And we also have to talk about the grain. The grain has a very good nutritional levels for human consumption and also animal consumption. We see that this can become in maybe 4 to 5 years. It could become a big answer for the people, the corn growers in the south of Manabí, where there's water problems. Hemp produces the same biomass as 1 hectare of corn with 1/4 of the water that the other one does. So that's a great advantage. Now that we have to be more careful with the water we use in our production system, hemp has that great advantage. And also about the industrial hemp, we also have to be aware that, as the name says, it's industrial. It competes with commodities. So it won't make sense for us to give production license of a crop if there's not an industry first that asks for that license. So that's a logical step. In the case of CBD and CBG, we are going to let the export of the biomass. I think some countries committed that error, that they thought, oh, we want our industry to develop, so we are not going to let the biomass be exported, so it has to be industrialized here. But we have to be honest, we have to know our advantages, and we are agro productive countries. Of course, we also want industry to develop, but we are not going to that growers that can grow and export biomass lose business because there's no industry that wants to take the risk. That also we have to be very aware. And people that are listening, we have to be also aware that India is going to be a very big player. We see India as a very big player because, as for example, today I was talking about the national holiday of the Papa. ¿Cómo se dice Papa?
The Pope.
No, Papa, not the Christian one, the ones with
potatoes?
Potatoes. It's the National Day of Potatoes. We are the genetic center of potatoes. India is the genetic center of cannabis. So, and they also have the advantage that they have been home of the largest pharmaceuticals industries doing all the generics medications for the whole world. So we have to know our place in the world and do what we do best. Ecuador has been prime exporter in bananas. We developed the shrimp industry and we developed the flower industry out of nowhere. And here we think our agro business members also are going to be prime exporters of cannabis.
Yes, excellent. Thank you. Speaking of your organic or biomass, there was a question up here about exportation. Will the cannabis production be restricted only for domestic value-added consumption, or can the growers offer a raw crop production for legal export, for example, to the United States?
For both, you have to meet the market needs. We are very aware that people are going to want to export because it's where you make the most money. That's very logical. You want to invest and get the highest return you can get. But we see a big advantage that we have that 1% limit, because it allows that if something happens, you can destine it to a local industry, and that's very important. We also have to make a local industry grow, because there's also an internal demand, or there are families that are looking for the CBD and CBG and also the THC in the lower, in the few years if THC also gets approved.
Okay, I would like to take two more questions. I know Andres is super busy, so in respect of your time, we're going to be answering two more questions, please.
Okay, I can combine a couple of them into one basic. Speaking of, one more time, is there going to be any specific requirements for who can get the licenses? Can it be a private citizen? Can it be a co-op? Can it be a foreign citizen who is a legal resident?
Look, we have done it. We as a ministry, we have several plans in several chains of informality. And we think that we do it with the personería jurídica, like a legal entity. It will be best. It's an easy step. You can do a company online nowadays. And it's a first step to be formalized and have some superintendencia de compañías and things behind. So you can be a foreigner, but you can have a local company. You can be a cooperative. That's also a legal entity. So there's no problem with that. It's just, we have had a few people say, hey, but you are not, I'm a natural person, I don't like companies. Okay, if you're going to make money, you're not going to make money just because you have to do a company that you can do it online. So that's our answer to them. And of course, because some people also have said that we are being, we are going to ask for a criminal past related to narcotics and money laundering. But this, as I told at the beginning, it's a normative according to the actual situation. This situation changes quickly. We don't think the next year is going to be the same as this year. So that's to people that say, hey, that's if somebody went to jail for it and already paid, you don't have to ask for that. But we have to also look at the other side of people that are going to say, hey, there's going to be a joint outside my kid's school. So we have to balance that. We are going to start with something that maybe some people are going to criticize that it's going to be too hard. We don't think so. But to those people, I tell them the big advantage of this is at a ministry level, it's very flexible, and it for sure will be changed and revised each year. And most likely it's going to be obsolete in 3 years. So I don't think, maybe if it goes depenalized at federal level in the US, the THC, we will have to see how other countries follow. And maybe it won't be needed, but that we will know.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, and one more question that is compilation one more time. Just a general, could you please once again talk about the timeline? When, more or less, how long it will take until domestic sales will be up and going, the ARCSA's laws going, and production habilitated, importing of seeds and production in the country?
Look, the biggest gap in this business is the access to genetics. We already in IAP is already trying to get some seeds from different countries. We are talking to Agrocalidad, so you have to open the markets on the phytosanitary level. That's about plant diseases, and you cannot skip that. That's for any kind of crop. Cannabis is not going to be a difference. For the industrial hemp, as I told you, first we need the industry. And industries, big industry, sugarcane industries that are interested in switching from sugarcane. As you know, many people that are listening, we consume less sugar each day. That already had an impact on the prices for the local farmers. So we want those farmers to switch to industrial hemp, but we are very aware that's going to take maybe 2 years on the timeline. On the other kind of cannabis, which is high in CBD and CBG, I think that maybe by the end of this year, beginning of the next year, we are already seeing some exports. And about the local market, It's about ARCSA to do the normative, and also the people that get here, how much from this crop, from this harvest are going to be have this problem between the 0.2 or 0.3% and the 1%, because for sure that's the crop that's going to be available from the industrial for the local industry. Also, we have to talk about heavy metals. I see this as one of the biggest threats. We here in Ecuador have our soils are of volcanic origin. Some soils in the peninsula or in Manabí are of marine origin, and those are very high in heavy metals. So we have to take all this into account. We have to also see that we have to look at the cheapest production systems, because we know that, for example, I see people that do hydroponics and many things, very high tech, but we have to see the market, how much time you can have high cost production. So if you ask me, after all these months talking and listening, and I learn each week, but I see the future long-term more on the industrial hemp and what you can get from CBD or CBG from the flower of those extensive low-cost production systems. The other side, I see it more risky. More risky, and it's one of the things we also have to look into account. There's not a big financial backup from banks in these sectors. So it has to be private equity, private risk that go to these high risk, but also high reward production systems. It's a rule of life. If you have big margins, risks are also bigger, and that's what people have to take into consideration. We can guideline, we can suggest, but I insist to every people that wants to get in this business to do the due diligence. The agricultural part is not easy. People that are already in agribusiness, they know it's not the same to have palm oil plantations than banana plantations, than flower plantations. So it goes from doing very little to do daily, to do very things very specifically by humidity and temperature control and many things. So I suggest this is for people that already have been in some agribusiness side.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Andres. We really have enjoyed this conversation with you, and having a top official government speaking to us directly to the expat population. And also, I can see there are some people that they are in the business, agricultural business here locally from Ecuador. I think we have to wait until we have the regulations that actually personally I was waiting for them on the 22nd, June 22nd, but you just mentioned at the beginning that we're going to be waiting for another week or so. So let's wait until we have a set of regulations where actually it can be clarify more of the questions that our attendees have. For now, well, I don't know if you want to say some final words to our attendees. And before that, I would like to thanks again, Joshua, for your great help.
No, thanks for the invite. We talked to a lot of people before this, but still, if people need to reach out, we are. You can share my email, and we are always receiving, and we can improve. As I told you, even if this gets signed, we are not going to be also responsible to change it by the month, but for sure it's going to be revised by each 8 months to a year. And the purpose is to start a little more harsh. I don't want to use harsh, more strict.
Regulated.
Not more strict, and then taking off the barriers until when we see that we have done the control right, that people trust that we are not, this is not marijuana, which, as I said, we are still living in a conservative country. So we have to take all those things into account. And it's going to be a great business opportunity, but we also don't want to be irresponsible In the past, for example, people got, there was like, I remember the langosta de agua dulce, where people, national banks were loaning money, lending money, and there was nothing. So we have to be very careful. We don't see national banks financing this, the CBD and the CBG part, but we do think that if there is an industry that opens up for the industrial hemp and takes a risk in a big industry, and once the genetic side, somewhere from INIAP in 1 or 2 years, we've seen a few years national banks lending money to the development of the industrial hemp.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your time again, and the best of luck with your work. Thank you so much for your great service to the country, because this eventually will generate a lot of income to our country. So for all of you, thank you so much for your questions, and thank you so much for your time. And we will be notifying you about the summary of this presentation, and we will be sharing with all of you this video. Have a nice day. Thank you so much.
Bye. Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.